aitah for telling my fiancé we should break up because I won't make my son consider her his mom. When she asked my son to call her mom, I swear the room changed temperature. It was like the air itself froze, thick and unmoving. I looked at her, at my 7-year-old sitting between us with his hands on the table, and I felt something split inside me. She said it so casually, like she was asking him to pass the salt. "You can call me Mom now," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And my son, my quiet, cautious little boy, looked at her like she'd just spoken in another language. Then he looked at me, waiting, and I didn't say anything. Not right away, because for that 1 second, I was trying to understand if she really meant it, or if she was testing me. For context, my wife, Anna, passed away 3 years ago. It was sudden. A car accident on a rainy November morning. One of those things people talk about like it happens to someone else. For months, my son wouldn't sleep without holding one of her scarves. He stopped talking for a while, and every night, I'd sit beside him and whisper stories about her. About how she used to sing off-key, how she'd burn pancakes but still call them Sunday breakfast, how she loved the smell of books more than perfume. I promised him, and maybe myself, that I would never let anyone erase her. Then came Clara. She was kind, patient. She didn't push. We met through mutual friends, and for a long time I kept things casual because of my son. But she waited. She said she understood, and slowly I believed her. She never brought up Anna. Never crossed that invisible boundary. Until last week, that night after she said those words, my son excused himself from the table and went to his room without eating. I sat there, staring at my plate, feeling the world tilt. Clara sighed. "You could have said something," she said. "Like what?" I asked. "Like, support me. He needs stability. I'm trying to give him that. Stability. That word. Like love was a structure you could just replace a broken beam in and call it safe again." I told her she was crossing a line. She said I was keeping us both trapped in the past. "As a kid," she said, voice shaking, "he needs a mother figure. I'm not trying to replace her, but if we're a family, he has to see me as one." And I said something I hadn't planned to say. "You'll never be his mom, and if that's what you need to hear, then maybe we shouldn't get married." The silence that followed was unbearable. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just looked at me like I'd betrayed her. "So, what am I supposed to be, then? A guest in your life? In his life?" I didn't have an answer. She left that night, suitcase half-packed, saying she needed to think. It's been 5 days. No calls, no texts. My son hasn't asked about her once. He just goes to school, does his homework, and sometimes I catch him glancing at the photo of Anna on the mantel, the one of her holding him when he was still a baby. Yesterday, Clara's sister called me. She said Clara was heartbroken, that I'd humiliated her, made her feel unwanted, like she was less than a memory. She said no one could compete with a dead woman, and maybe she's right. Maybe I've built my life around grief so tightly that no one can fit inside it. But I keep thinking, if I force my son to call someone else mom, what does that make me? Because to me, mom isn't just a title. It's her. It's every bedtime story, every bandaged knee, every lullaby that made the world feel safe again. You don't replace that with a ring. You don't reassign it because it's convenient. Today, Clara came back to pick up the rest of her things. We didn't argue. We didn't even talk much. But before she left, she looked at me and said, "He'll grow up and resent you for this. You'll see. You'll teach him that love has limits." Maybe she's right again. Or maybe I'm teaching him that love has boundaries, that some things sacred shouldn't be rewritten. After she left, I found one of her notes in the kitchen drawer. It said, "I was ready to love both of you. You weren't ready to let me." I stood there for a long time holding that note, realizing that maybe we were both right and both wrong. I still don't know if I did the right thing. Part of me wonders if I chose the past over the future. But when I tucked my son into bed tonight and he whispered, "Dad, Mom would have liked that we didn't change her name," I knew I couldn't regret it. Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel good. It just feels true. TLDR. My fiancé asked my son to call her mom. I told her that wasn't going to happen and that if she couldn't accept that, we shouldn't get married. Now she's gone, and I'm wondering if I made the right choice. Part 2. The weight of two names. It's been 3 months since Clara walked out of our house. The house that still smelled faintly of her vanilla shampoo and the cinnamon tea she used to make every night. At first, the silence was a relief. Then it became unbearable. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that standing my ground was the only way to protect my son's memory of his mother. But every night, when the house went quiet, I'd find myself replaying that moment over and over, the sound of her keys clinking as she left, the look in her eyes when I told her you'll never be his mom. I thought conviction would bring peace. Instead, it brought ghosts. My son, Ethan, seemed lighter at first. He smiled more. He even started drawing again. Superheroes and cars. Things kids are supposed to draw when they feel safe. But sometimes I'd find him just sitting on the couch staring at the door. Once I asked him what he was thinking about. He said, "Do people stop being family when they leave?" I didn't know what to say. I just told him, some people come into our lives to stay. Some come to teach us something before they go. He nodded slowly, and that was the end of it. But his words stuck with me, because maybe that's what Clara did. She came to teach me something I wasn't ready to learn. Then, one afternoon in early spring, I came home from work and saw an envelope on the porch. No return address, no stamp. Just my name written in handwriting I recognized instantly. Clara's. I stood there for a long time before opening it. Inside was a letter and a folded ultrasound photo. The letter was short. Too short. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't even know if I should. In not asking for anything. Not money, not help, not even forgiveness. I just thought you should know that I'm not alone anymore. And I guess neither are you. The ultrasound photo was dated 6 weeks ago. I sat on the steps, staring at that image until the sun went down and the shadows blurred it into something unrecognizable. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The ticking clock, the wind brushing against the window, my own heartbeat. I thought about Clara, somewhere out there, carrying a child that was half hers, half mine. I thought about Ethan, asleep down the hall, dreaming of a mother who no longer existed and a woman who might become one. And I thought about myself, stuck between past and future, loyalty and guilt. Because now, whatever I'd told myself about protecting my son felt small, petty, even. What was I protecting him from? Love. The next morning, I drove to Clara's apartment. The blinds were drawn. Her car wasn't there. A neighbor told me she had moved out 2 weeks ago. Didn't say where. All she left behind was her mail forwarding form, but it only listed a post office box. I sent her a letter that day. I didn't apologize. Not yet. I just wrote, "I got your note. I don't know what you want me to do, but I need to know you're okay. If you don't want to talk, just send a sign. Anything." No answer. Weeks turned into months. Life tried to go on. Ethan turned 8 in June. We had a small party. Cake, balloons, his friends from school. He laughed. He really laughed. But later that night, when everyone left and the kitchen was quiet, he asked, "Will the baby call me brother?" I froze. I hadn't told him anything. Not about the letter, not about the photo. "What baby?" I asked carefully. He looked confused. "The one from Clara. She told me before she left." I felt my stomach drop. "When did she tell you that?" "The day she left. She said she wanted me to know I wouldn't be alone forever." He paused. "She said maybe one day I could help teach the baby about mom, about both moms, to names, to ghosts." And suddenly I realized that everything I'd been afraid of, losing Anna's memory, confusing Ethan, Clara had somehow handled with more grace than I ever could. She hadn't wanted to replace Anna. She had wanted to honor her, to build a bridge instead of a wall, and I'd burned it down. 3 months later, I finally got a response. It wasn't from Clara. It was from a lawyer. She had listed me as the father, and the letter included paperwork, child support, parental rights, all the formalities I'd once sworn I wouldn't let anyone trap me into again. But tucked between the legal forms was another note. From Clara. "This isn't revenge. I just want you to have the chance to know them, if you want it. If you don't, you'll tell them you loved them anyway." I cried. For the first time since Anna's funeral, I cried so hard it hurt to breathe, because she was still giving me something I didn't deserve, another chance. It's been almost a year now. The baby's name is Leela. She has Clara's eyes and, somehow, my son's smile. We see them every weekend. Ethan calls her his sister. He even helps feed her, talks to her in that gentle way only big brothers do. Sometimes, when I watch him with her, I see something heal in real time. not perfectly, but honestly. Clara and I talk, but we're not together. There's too much history. Too much pain. But there's respect, and maybe that's more than I could have hoped for. A few nights ago, Ethan asked if he could put a new photo on the mantle, one of him holding Leela. He placed it right beside Anna's old picture. Two mothers, one gone, one still here. Two stories that didn't compete, they completed. And I finally understood what Clara had been trying to tell me all along. That love doesn't erase the past, it expands it. That being someone's mom isn't about replacing a memory. It's about building another one beside it. Till Part 2. Months after the breakup, the narrator finds out his ex-fiancée Clara is pregnant. At first, he struggles with guilt and fear of replacing his late wife, but eventually learns to accept that love can coexist, not overwrite. He and Clara raise their daughter and son separately but united, proving that family isn't defined by one name. Part 3. When she came back, time didn't heal. It reshaped. The sharp edges of loss dulled into something quieter but not painless. It's been 7 years since Clara left. 7 years since I found that ultrasound photo on my doorstep. 7 years since my son, Ethan, first held his little sister, Leela, and called her my miracle. Now he's 15, tall and awkward in that teenage way, still protective, still soft-spoken. Lila's 6, all wild curls, loud laughter, and the kind of innocence that has no idea it's the glue holding broken things together. And Clara came back, not as my fiancée, not even as my friend, but as the mother of my daughter, and the woman who once taught me that love can survive the wreckage of grief, even if it never feels whole again. It started with a message. We need to talk. It's about Leela. Those 7 words froze me more than any silence ever had. When I got to her apartment, I could see it before she spoke, the fear behind her calm expression, the way her hands trembled around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She said Leela had started asking questions, the kind no parent is ever ready for. She asked me if she had another mom. Clara said softly, like Ethan does. The question lingered between us like a ghost. We'd always been careful with the truth. I told Ethan about Anna when he was old enough to understand love and loss could exist together. But with Leela, we hesitated. We thought she was too young, too gentle for the kind of story that reshapes the way a child sees their world. But she had noticed the photo on the mantle, Anna holding baby Ethan, and asked, why is there only one picture of her and none with me? Clara said she froze, because how do you explain that someone could be family without ever meeting them? I went to see Leela that weekend. She was in her room building a little paper family with crayons and glue. She showed me proudly, a dad, a mom, a brother, and her, drawn with pink cheeks and messy hair. Then she frowned. Mom said I had another mom once. Is that true? I sat beside her on the floor. Her eyes were wide and blinking, waiting for an answer that could change how she saw everything. I nodded slowly. Yes, sweetheart. Her name was Anna. She tilted her head. Is she gone like Grandpa? Yes, I said softly, but not really gone. She's just somewhere else. Leela thought for a long moment, then picked up her crayons again. She drew another small figure beside the paper mom. Then she can be part of the family too, she said. I looked down at the drawing, 2 mothers holding hands, smiling, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. Later that night, Clara called. Her voice was shaky. She told me she has 2 moms now, she said, and she said they both love her. There was a pause. I think I finally understand what you were trying to protect back then. It hit me like a quiet revelation. Back then, we were fighting to be right. Now, we were just trying to be good. A few weeks later, Clara invited us to dinner. It was the first time in years that we'd all sat at the same table. Me, her, Ethan, and Leela. The air was fragile at first, full of unspoken history. But then Leela started talking about her drawings, her new teacher, how she had told everyone at school that she had 2 moms and 1 dad and 1 very serious brother. We laughed. Even Ethan smiled, embarrassed but proud. And in that moment, something shifted. We weren't the family we used to dream of. We weren't perfect, but we were something real. Something rebuilt. After dinner, Clara and I sat outside on the porch while the kids played with the dog. She looked out at them and said, do you ever think about how it could have been if things had gone differently? I nodded. Every day. But then I remember. If we hadn't fallen apart, maybe none of this would have existed either. She smiled faintly. I used to hate you, you know, for choosing her memory over me. And now I think you did what any decent man would do. You just didn't know how to let someone new in without betraying someone gone. Her voice trembled a little, and maybe I didn't know how to love you without trying to fill that space. We sat there in silence, watching our children chase fireflies in the fading light. It was bittersweet but honest, and that was enough. Weeks turned into months again. Clara and I stayed close, not as lovers, but as something else, something harder to define. Maybe love reimagined. Sometimes, when she drops Leela off, we linger a little too long at the door, sharing smiles that carry years of understanding and forgiveness. Ethan calls her Clara, but the way he says it now doesn't hold distance, just quiet respect. And Leela, she calls her mom, and sometimes, when she looks at the photo of Anna, she whispers, "Hi, Mom number 2. It doesn't confuse her, it completes her. A few nights ago, after I tucked Leela in, she handed me another drawing. This one was of a big tree with 4 people standing beneath it. 2 women, 1 man, 2 children. That's our family tree, she said. Even the ones who aren't here anymore. I looked closer and saw that she'd drawn tiny roots spreading deep into the paper, connecting every person together. Everyone's still connected, she explained, even if they're in the sky. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, her words echoing in my mind. Sometimes I still dream of Anna. In the dreams, she's sitting by a window, sunlight on her face. She doesn't speak. She just smiles. And I think she forgives me, not for moving on, but for finally understanding that love doesn't belong to the living or the dead. It belongs to the ones who remember. TLDR Part 3. 7 years later, Clara returns when their daughter starts asking about the other mom. The father must face his past again, but instead of guilt, he finds peace, realizing that love isn't about replacement, but connection. The story ends with the children symbolically reuniting both mothers in a drawing, healing the past.